I know I told you I was going to save this question for in class, but I thought even if I do it in class, I want to have a video that you can go back and look at it a couple of times because it's a bit tricky. I would say this is the hardest thing of this unit. For some people it just makes sense, it's common sense, but I want to try to give you sort of a strategy for solving a question like this. Okay, it says the graph of g of x is the image of the graph of f of x. So we've got two graphs here. Let's call this one f of x, and we'll call the dark one g of x. Okay, it says there's been some transformations. F of x has become g of x. Label corresponding points. Okay, corresponding points are usually given to you, but in this case it's pretty easy to see what would be corresponding, right? I mean, if I took this point is 0, 8. If that's on f of x, what's the corresponding point on g of x? You can see it's there. It's the same spot in the shape, okay, and that point is -2, 0. And you need 2 points to do the transformations, to figure out what's happened. So let's pick another point. I'm going to pick this sort of a valley here. I think this valley is 2, -8. And what would be the corresponding point on the dark graph? I think you can see that it's 0, -8. Okay, so what we're going to do to try to figure out what has happened to get from f to g, sometimes it's really easy to see. I mean, in this case, you can see it's probably moved left, and it looks like it's got a vertical compression. Okay, and you could probably figure it out just by looking at it. But I want to give you a couple of strategies of how to do this. So let's take a look at the 2 points for f of x. Okay, the 2 points we've got are 0, 8, and we've got 2, -8. And let's look at two things on those points. So let's look at the vertical distance between the points, and we're going to look at the horizontal distance between the 2 points. Okay, so what is the vertical distance between these 2 points? Vertical means y. What's the difference between 8 and -8? That's a vertical distance of 16 units. What's the difference in horizontal? That's 2 units. Okay, let's park that for a second, and now let's look at g of x. The first point we have, the one that corresponds to 0, 8, is -2, 0, and the other point is 0, -8. Again, let's look at the vertical distance. The vertical distance here is 8, and the horizontal distance is 2. Okay, do you see that? Do you see the horizontal from -2 to 0, that's 2 units, and from 0 to -8, that's 8 units. This tells us a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, what we want to do is we want to write g of x, the equation, in terms of f of x. What has happened to f of x? Okay, maybe there was an a value, maybe there was a b value, maybe there was a c value, or I guess we call it h, I don't even know. I think we're calling it h. And maybe there was a k value. We just have to figure out what each of those are. Okay, let's focus on the vertical first. So I'm going to just look at the vertical. What's going on with the vertical? Well, how has it changed from there being a space of 16 with the original graph and there being a space of 8 in the second graph? That looks to me like it has had a vertical compression of 2. It's divided by 2. Okay, so this tells me that my a value must be 1/2. Does this make sense? If I take my, let's try it on a point. If I take my y value here as 8 and I multiply it by 1/2, what do I end up with? 4. Wait. I'm supposed to end up with 0. What does this tell me about my k value? This must be that I'm also going to go down 4. Does that make sense? Let's try it. Okay, let's try it on the second point. If I take this and multiply it by 1/2, so -8 times 1/2, what does that give me? That gives me -4. But where do I want to end up? I want to end up at -8. So if I take away a 4, I will end up at -8. Okay, so let's write that in. We've just figured out that A is a half. I don't know what B is yet. I don't know what H is yet. And then I'm going to take away 4. Okay, again, you can try that on any point. If you take a point on f of x and you do these two things to it, do you end up with the point on g of x? In this case, we do. All right, now let's look at the horizontal distance. Okay, so I'm going to focus here now. What's happened? The horizontal distance was 2, and then in g of x, it's 2. What does that tell you about the horizontal stretch of compression? That tells me that B must be 1. It has not been stretched or compressed. So I can put that there. Now I just have to figure out what is H. Well, what do? Let's go and look at, say, this point. Let's look at the x value. The x value is 0. If I multiply it, if I divide it by 1, what's 0 divided by 1? 0. But where am I supposed to end up? Okay, let's make sure we know what we're doing here. We're looking here. If I divide by 1, do I get here? No. It looks to me like I have to have an h value of -2. I have to go left 2. Okay, let's try it on the second point. That's x value here. If I divide by 1, what's 2 divided by 1? 2. Where do I want to end up? 0. If I take away 2, I have the right point. So that's my equation. Okay, so that's a little bit tricky. There are a few like that in the homework. I would suggest you try them. The good news is I've never seen one this complex on a test or an exam, because that has, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Okay? So now you've got that question.